The story opens inside a modest courthouse located in a small southern town, a place that reflects deep-rooted traditions but also carries the weight of long-standing racial tensions. The atmosphere is tense, charged with anticipation as a high-profile civil rights protest case is about to be heard. Citizens from the community, activists, and media representatives have gathered to witness what some hope will be a landmark ruling on police conduct and protest rights. Amid the crowd enters Malcolm Price, a black man in his 40s. He's dressed sharply, wearing a tailored suit, carrying a briefcase, and projecting the quiet confidence of someone who knows his way around the law. Malcolm is not just any spectator. He is a highly educated attorney with a powerful reputation for championing civil rights and social justice. However, at this moment, those around him, including some courthouse staff and law enforcement, fail to recognize his identity or his status. At the center of the courthouse security is Deputy Rick Harlan, a white officer known for his aggressive demeanor and racial bias. He views the growing crowd of black activists and observers with suspicion and disdain. When Malcolm calmly walks through the courtroom doors, Harlan immediately misjudges him, assuming he is a protest agitator or troublemaker rather than an observer or legal professional. The tension between the two men escalates quickly. Without any warning or provocation, Deputy Harlan confronts Malcolm. He demands to see identification, and when Malcolm responds calmly, explaining that he is a legal consultant here to observe the trial, Harlan's suspicion turns to hostility. The officer's bias and paranoia override any respect or procedure. Suddenly, in a shocking abuse of authority, Harlan kicks Malcolm in the courtroom, an act of blatant violence that shocks everyone present. The courtroom, a place meant for justice and order, instantly becomes a scene of injustice and chaos. Malcolm stumbles but keeps his composure. The crowd gasps, some rising to challenge the officer, but Harlan arrests Malcolm on the spot, falsely accusing him of obstruction and causing a disturbance. As Malcolm is handcuffed and led away, his calm demeanor contrasts starkly with the humiliation and violence he has just endured. Rather than reacting with anger or fear, Malcolm silently reflects on the irony of the situation. This man, the deputy who assaulted him, is using the very laws that Malcolm helped create against him. Malcolm quietly thinks to himself, "Let's see how this law holds up," signaling that he is ready to fight back not with violence, but with the law itself. This moment sets the tone for the story's exploration of systemic racism, power imbalance, and the struggle for justice. The court, a symbol of fairness, has been corrupted by prejudice and fear, but Malcolm's experience hints at a deeper narrative: the power of knowledge, legal expertise, and resilience in the face of injustice. This opening part introduces key themes that will carry through the entire story: racial profiling, the abuse of police power, and the fight for equal rights. It also firmly establishes Malcolm Price as a protagonist who is not a victim, but a determined advocate, ready to turn the system's flaws on their head using the very laws he helped shape. The arrest is more than just a physical act. It's a symbolic kick against a man who represents progress and hope in a system resistant to change. It forces the audience to confront uncomfortable realities while rooting for Malcolm's eventual victory, not just for himself, but for the broader community fighting for justice. After the intense and shocking events of the courtroom assault in Part 1, the story shifts back in time to provide crucial context and depth to Malcolm Price's character and the legal landscape in which the story unfolds. The scene transports U.S. roughly 10 years earlier to the bustling corridors of a state legislature in a larger city far from the small southern town. Here, Malcolm is introduced as a young, ambitious, and idealistic legal mind. He is a recent Harvard Law School graduate, Passionate about civil rights and determined to use his education and skills to create meaningful social change, Malcolm works as a legal advisor to a progressive state senator known for championing equality and reform. Together, they are tackling the urgent issue of police misconduct and the growing public outcry over the treatment of protesters and minority communities. This is a time when awareness about systemic racism and abuses of power is increasing. But the political climate remains resistant to change, with many lawmakers reluctant to challenge law enforcement or upset powerful interests. Within this charged atmosphere, Malcolm and the senator draft a comprehensive bill aimed at protecting the constitutional rights of protesters and establishing stronger mechanisms for police accountability. Their proposed law includes clear definitions of lawful protest, restrictions on excessive use of force, requirements for transparency in law enforcement actions, and legal recourse for those whose rights are violated. Malcolm's role in this process is pivotal. He meticulously researches precedents, crafts persuasive legal language, and navigates complex political negotiations. He understands that this law is not just a piece of legislation but a beacon of hope for marginalized communities, a tool to uphold justice where it has long been denied. The bill faces intense opposition. Some lawmakers argue it will undermine police authority, others dismiss it as unnecessary. Yet, Malcolm's unwavering commitment and the senator's tenacity help the bill pass narrowly through the legislature. The victory is bittersweet. It represents progress, but the challenges ahead remain formidable. This flashback sequence enriches the story by revealing Malcolm's backstory and the personal investment he has in the fight for civil rights. It shows him as more than a victim of injustice. He is a creator of the very legal framework intended to protect people like himself and others subjected to discrimination. As the flashback concludes, the story returns to the present moment. Malcolm is freshly arrested and bruised, but now the audience understands the full gravity of his situation. The law that should protect him is being twisted or ignored by the very people meant to enforce it. His statement, "Let's see how this law holds up," gains powerful resonance, because it is grounded in his personal history of crafting that law from the ground up. This part also introduces themes of hope, idealism, and the persistent struggle to reform systems entrenched in bias. It contrasts the high hopes of legislative progress with the grim reality of its uneven application. Malcolm's flashback provides motivation for his calm resolve and strategic approach to the injustice he faces. Overall, Part 2 deepens the narrative, highlighting how laws are not just abstract rules but living instruments shaped by people's efforts and ideals, and how those laws can be powerful weapons for change when wielded by the right hands. It prepares the audience to follow Malcolm's legal battle with a richer understanding of the stakes involved. Following Malcolm Price's arrest and the flashback revealing his instrumental role in drafting the civil rights law, Part 3 delves into the aftermath of the incident and the concerted efforts by local authorities to obscure the truth and protect their own. Once Malcolm is released from custody, though not through justice or due process, but rather through political pressure behind the scenes, the real battle begins. The sheriff's department and city officials realize the potential fallout from the public beating of a well-respected black attorney is a disaster for their image. They quickly mobilize to control the narrative, aiming to shift blame away from their officers and suppress any scrutiny. The police department's internal communications reflect a clear strategy: discredit Malcolm, minimize the incident, and limit media exposure. Official statements paint Malcolm as a disruptive agitator who resisted lawful orders, attempting to justify the deputy's excessive force. Any video footage that might have captured the event mysteriously goes missing, and witnesses who might contradict the official story face intimidation or are ignored. At the same time, local news outlets, many with close ties to city officials, report selectively. Their coverage downplays the assault, focuses on alleged courtroom disruptions, and even suggests Malcolm provoked the officer. This media manipulation helps shape public perception, creating doubt about Malcolm's credibility and casting him in a negative light. Meanwhile, Malcolm faces pressure from all sides. Activists and community members urge him to take the incident public and speak out fiercely, while city officials try to coax him into silence or settlement. Malcolm, however, refuses to be baited into a reactive, emotional response. Instead, he chooses to focus on dismantling the corrupt system with legal precision. Behind closed doors, Malcolm investigates further and uncovers a disturbing pattern. He learns that Deputy Rick Harlan, the officer who assaulted him, has a long history of excessive force complaints and racial profiling. Yet, disciplinary actions against Harlan have been rare or superficial, protected by police union backing and a city unwilling to confront systemic issues. More troublingly, Malcolm discovers that the very law he helped write, the Civil Rights Statute meant to protect citizens from exactly this kind of abuse, is being selectively ignored or undermined by local law enforcement and prosecutors. This selective enforcement exposes the gap between law in theory and law in practice, highlighting how systemic racism can subvert even well-intended reforms. The story explores themes of institutional corruption and the lengths to which powerful entities will go to protect themselves. It also illustrates the complex dynamics between media, government, and the public in shaping justice and perception. Malcolm's calm, measured approach contrasts sharply with the chaos around him. Rather than succumbing to bitterness or despair, he channels his frustration into building a legal case that exposes the cover-up. His efforts represent not just a fight for personal vindication, but a broader campaign for accountability and transparency. This part of the story heightens tension by showing how the system resists change and punishes those who challenge it. It emphasizes that achieving justice is not only about having the right laws, but also about ensuring those laws are fairly and consistently applied. By the end of Part 3, the audience sees Malcolm stepping from the role of victim into that of a strategist and warrior armed with knowledge and determination. The cover-up is not just an obstacle but a call to action, setting the stage for the legal battle to come. Following the cover-up attempts and the deepening corruption exposed in Part 3, Part 4 shifts focus to Malcolm Price's strategic and methodical fight for justice through the legal system. This section is pivotal, as it marks the turning point where Malcolm moves from being a victim of police brutality to an active force challenging the status quo. Having gathered evidence about Deputy Rick Harlan's history of abuse and the city's systematic disregard for the law Malcolm helped write, Malcolm decides to file a civil rights lawsuit. But this is not a typical lawsuit fueled by anger or a desire for revenge. Instead, Malcolm approaches the case as a legal expert, using the very legislation he authored as the foundation of his claim. Malcolm's decision to invoke the law he crafted earlier gives the narrative a strong thematic core. Justice can be reclaimed when knowledge and persistence intersect. The law, designed to protect citizens against abuses like the one Malcolm endured, is the weapon he wields against those who seek to ignore it. The courtroom becomes a battleground where his intellect, experience, and calm resolve are put on full display. The lawsuit names not only Officer Harlan, but also the city government and the sheriff's department as defendants, highlighting the institutional nature of the problem. Malcolm's legal arguments are precise and powerful, meticulously citing sections of the civil rights law that were violated, such as the rights to peaceful protest, protection from excessive force, and equal treatment under the law. His courtroom appearances attract significant attention. Media outlets, previously swayed by the police narrative, begin to cover the trial more seriously, while activists and community members rally behind Malcolm. His presence and the case force public officials to respond, and the tension in the courtroom escalates as the stakes grow higher. The defense, led by a team of aggressive attorneys, attempts to undermine Malcolm's credibility and dismiss the charges as baseless. They portray Harlan as a dedicated officer who acted appropriately under pressure. However, Malcolm's calm demeanor and thorough preparation make it clear that the defense's arguments lack substance. A crucial moment occurs when Malcolm calls witnesses and presents evidence of Harlan's prior misconduct, exposing a pattern of abuse long ignored by city officials. The judge, initially cautious, is compelled to acknowledge the seriousness of the case, especially given that the law Malcolm authored clearly prohibits the actions taken against him. This courtroom reversal symbolizes the triumph of law and reason over prejudice and corruption. Malcolm's legal expertise transforms a personal injustice into a broader fight for accountability, shining a light on systemic failures. The story highlights the power of the law when upheld fairly and the importance of having advocates who know how to wield it. Throughout this part, the themes of justice, intellect versus ignorance, and the transformative potential of the law are underscored. Malcolm is portrayed not just as a survivor, but as a visionary leader capable of turning his painful experience into a catalyst for change. The courtroom battle also introduces new tension. As the trial progresses, those invested in maintaining the status quo grow desperate. Threats and intimidation attempts increase, but Malcolm's resolve only strengthens. Underscoring his commitment to seeing the case through. By the end of Part 4, the story sets up a dramatic build-up toward a high-stakes verdict. The courtroom reversal serves as a turning point where the fight for justice is no longer just theoretical, it becomes tangible and real, with the potential to reshape the community's future. The story marks a crescendo in Malcolm Price's fight for justice, transforming his personal struggle into a powerful public movement. After the courtroom reversal, where Malcolm's lawsuit gains momentum, this section explores how the truth begins to surface and how the community rallies around the issues of police brutality, systemic racism, and the quest for accountability. With the trial now in the national spotlight, media outlets that once downplayed the incident begin to report extensively on Malcolm's case. Investigative journalists dig deep into Deputy Rick Harlan's history, uncovering a troubling pattern of racial profiling, excessive force, and misconduct complaints that were previously buried or ignored by the police department. This exposure fuels public outrage and puts increasing pressure on local officials to address the problem honestly. Community activists and civil rights organizations mobilize in support of Malcolm, organizing protests, rallies, and social media campaigns that amplify the message. They highlight the larger systemic issues that Malcolm's case represents, connecting his personal ordeal to the ongoing national conversation about racial injustice and police reform. Malcolm, however, remains composed and strategic throughout this media storm. Instead of allowing the moment to become a spectacle, he uses every opportunity to speak thoughtfully and passionately about the importance of law, accountability, and collective action. His speeches emphasize that justice is not merely about punishing one officer, but about creating lasting change in the systems that enable abuse. One of the most powerful moments in this part occurs during a televised legal panel, where Malcolm is invited to discuss his case. He shares his story not with bitterness but with a vision for hope, urging the audience to recognize the power of laws and civic engagement in dismantling injustice. His message resonates deeply, inspiring many to get involved and advocate for Reform. As the trial progresses, the pressure mounts on Deputy Harlan. Witnesses come forward to testify about their own experiences with him, corroborating the pattern of misconduct. Under intense questioning, Harlan's defenses begin to crumble. The truth about his deliberate abuse of power cannot be hidden any longer. In a dramatic turn, Harlan takes the stand and admits that he recognized Malcolm during the courtroom incident and still chose to use force against him. This confession is a devastating blow to the defense's case and a vindication of Malcolm's claims. It underscores the racial bias and personal animosity that fueled the assault, exposing the human cost of systemic prejudice. This revelation also serves as a moment of redemption for Malcolm and the community. It confirms the reality of their experiences and validates their calls for justice. The public acknowledgement of wrongdoing helps break the silence that has protected abusive officers and institutions for so long. Throughout this part, themes of courage, resilience, and the power of truth are strongly evident. Malcolm's journey from victim to leader inspires those around him, showing how one person's commitment to justice can spark a larger movement. The story portrays redemption not just as a legal victory, but as a societal awakening. The exposure of corruption and abuse ignites hope for real reform, setting the stage for the final resolution of the story. Malcolm's unwavering dedication to justice and the collective efforts of the community create momentum that cannot be ignored. By the end of Part 5, the story is poised for its climax, with the courtroom drama reaching its peak and the community united in pursuit of accountability and change. Story brings a powerful and emotionally charged conclusion to Malcolm Price's long fight for justice. After months of legal battles, public exposure, and community activism, the courtroom drama reaches its climax with a much-anticipated verdict. The jury, having carefully considered the evidence and testimony, rules decisively in favor of Malcolm. They find that Deputy Rick Harlan did indeed violate Malcolm's civil rights, and that the city government and sheriff's department were complicit in allowing systemic abuses to persist unchecked. The verdict not only holds Harlan accountable, but also forces the city to pay damages for Malcolm's unlawful arrest and assault. Beyond the financial settlement, the ruling demands significant reforms within the police department. This includes new oversight measures, mandatory training on racial bias and use of force, and transparent disciplinary processes designed to prevent future abuses. The law Malcolm helped write, previously ignored or sidelined, is now being fully enforced and honored. The courtroom erupts with mixed reactions. Supporters of Malcolm cheer, activists feel vindicated, and some city officials are visibly shaken by the outcome. The verdict sends a clear message that justice can prevail, even against entrenched power and prejudice. Malcolm, however, remains composed. He understands that this victory, while monumental, is only one step in a long journey toward true equality and justice. He quietly leaves the courtroom, walking past the very spot where he was assaulted. This moment is symbolic. The same place where he was kicked now witnesses his dignity and strength. Outside the courthouse, a crowd gathers, community members, activists, and media, all eager to hear Malcolm's thoughts. Instead of boasting or celebration, Malcolm delivers a humble and inspiring message. He speaks about the importance of perseverance, the power of the law when applied fairly, and the ongoing need for vigilance against injustice. His words resonate deeply, emphasizing that justice is a right, not a favor. In the weeks that follow, Malcolm's case becomes a catalyst for broader change. Other cities and states take notice, prompting reviews of their own police practices and civil rights protections. Malcolm is invited to speak at conferences, legal forums, and community events, becoming a prominent advocate for reform. Deputy Harlan faces further consequences as federal authorities open an investigation into his conduct and he is eventually charged with civil rights violations. The officer's fall from grace underscores the story's theme of accountability and the risks of unchecked power. Significant moment of closure comes when the city unveils a plaque on the courthouse wall dedicated to justice and equality. Featuring a quote from Malcolm, "Justice is not a favor. It is a right." This public acknowledgement symbolizes the hard-won progress and serves as a reminder of the struggle that made it possible. Part 6 highlights themes of redemption, dignity, and the enduring fight for justice. It illustrates how courage and knowledge can challenge and change flawed systems. The story closes on a hopeful note, recognizing that while battles are won, the broader war for equality continues. Ultimately, this final section underscores the pros, the p as pors that continues. Ultimately, this final section underscores the po insan alzenkim asbi fifa rejivim tinas oresta. Message that true justice requires both legal strength and community resolve. Malcolm's journey from being physically kicked down in a courtroom to becoming a symbol of lawful resistance embodies the possibility of transformation and the power of the law as a tool for positive change.